Good evening, guys. Welcome to Kenya Cricket Chat YouTube channel. This evening, we are with Daniel Wahome from Kenya Broadcasting Corporation and Alfred Njuguna, former national team cricket player. And this evening, we'll mainly be discussing the Normalization Committee. So I'll start with you, Wahome. The Normalization Committee came in March. Their main mandate was to give us a constitution so that we can have elections to constitute the Kenya Cricket Board. As we all know, Kenya Cricket is run under ICC and Africa Cricket Association, and the board does everything. Without the board, majorly, there is no way we can access cricket funds. We need cricket funds for operations. Operations include players, teams, we have development teams, we have national teams, we have Cricket Kenya staff, and other things that we do with those funds. At the moment, the funds are stuck in Dubai. We haven't accessed those funds since 2019. We received the funds in quarters. So we have Q1 to Q4. So in 2019, we received money for only one quarter, but that was also being backdated from 2018 because the team had to go out for the Cricket World Cup Challenge. We are in the league in Group B. So since then, the whole of 2020, we haven't received Q1 to Q4. 2021, we haven't received Q1 to Q3. And now that we are heading on to it's September now, so October, November, December, if we don't have a board by then, we are not going to receive Q4 as well. So I'll start with asking you, what was the mandate of the Kenya Cricket Normalization Committee and what have they achieved so far, considering their timeline?
Well, thank you very much. Well, thank you very much, Beryl. First of all, when you look at normalization, and it's a concept where a body, an interim board or executive committee is put to run a federation. And yes, this is given situations where the functions of that federation are considered not to be in right order. There has been a push and shove at Cricket Kenya. And when Cabinet Secretary Ambassador Dr. Mina Mohammed put together the Normalization Committee, one of the clear mandates was that Cricket Kenya has got to align with the requirements of the International Cricket Council, the ICC. It was explicit there. And in the letter that was, the communication that was given when Lady Justice and her team were appointed to form that normalization committee, it was quite explicit that, number one, the full operations of Cricket Kenya were not possible at that point. The fact that Cricket Kenya, the different factions who were interested in running the game or said they were running the game simply could not do it. Then there is the second factor. Sports overall across the world is not, or rather say, let me put it this way, is averse to court processes solving all these matters. In Kenya, we've got a sport dispute tribunal that has been respected across the world by the World Anti-Doping Agency and other bodies. Their decisions are bound. A decision at the Sports Dispute Tribunal at the moment can only be appealed at the Court of Arbitration for Sport, not at the High Court. It's been proven. So the constant number of cases and injunctions simply stall the operations of Cricket Kenya. You may look at what the different factions were looking at. One is, are you trying to stiff-neck yourself, or rather steamroll yourself into the current setup of the national laws of the Sports Act, vis-a-vis the continuing activity of cricket as is, given that cricket is not your volleyball, is not your football, is not your athletics. Cricket in Kenya is restricted to basically three places: Nakuru, Nairobi, and Mombasa. That's where cricket is active. Nakuru, there is a development program, and the fact that quite a number of women's team players have come from there, there may not be an active league, but that's where else you look. So that whole setup is, where is it active vis-a-vis national outlook that is envisaged by the Sports Act. So eventually, just to put order back into the game and to bring Kenya back to where it was 19 years ago, I would not say 18, let me say 19 years ago, then that's what the mandate was. The Normalization Committee was to meet with the stakeholders. And who are the stakeholders in this case? The most important one is the player. So the players have met with them. There is the coaching staff, the umpires. So those are people who are supposed to be there. And when you have the umpires, you have to include the scorers. That's one group of people within the cricket ecosystem. Then you've got now people who are in administration and people who may own the, and also where the cricket is played. Cricket in Kenya, I think at the moment doesn't have a public ground. It's mainly private entities. Even Lenana School, I would consider it a private entity, the fact that it's within a school. If you're going to play at a school like where Stray Lions play, they play in a school, that is a private entity. So all across the country, the private members clubs and the schools are where cricket can be played. And so all those people have got to be consulted. And overall, look at where it's active. Mombasa has got that league that's been sponsored by NCBA. It continues, Nairobi and that. COVID aside, overall, there has not been an agreement onto who's in charge of the sport. And when that comes into play, you're taken through something I never wish for anyone, normalization. I've seen it happen in football. It basically means you're being restructured. In simple terms, it is like a company that is financially in the red, now having an audit firm or a financial services firm coming in as a receiver manager or an administrator. It is something that means that the entire setup, the way things are done, will have to change. That is what normalization is, so that you align and get back to it. The other mandates of the Normalization Committee, the national teams specifically, not the leagues and everything, the national teams where they've got duty, and the secretariat, so that some of the things that go around, for example, the national teams affiliating with the Africa Cricket and also the ICC can go on. Then there's an important one, which is the constitution. This has delayed, and I think for that reason, they've sought for an extension, should be about another 2 months or so, from the ICC, so that this can be dealt with. Remember, the Constitution of Cricket Kenya must align with the Sports Act and the International Cricket Council, and that's where it's difficult. And I think that would be the only reason as to why that extension would be given. I have seen it happen before with other bodies. It's very difficult to align with the Sports Act, while at the same time staying level with an international body. That would be the main contention, that constitution.
All right. The constitution was a major part of the mandate of the Normalization Committee. They met with the stakeholders, they met with the former players, they met with current players at Kasarani. That has been a while, over 2 months now, I think. And I'm just wondering what's the holdup, because the major thing in that constitution, there were only 2 issues: the electoral college and the membership. Those were the only contentious issues. Are those not issues that can be ironed out within 6 months? Because I think there are clauses for changing the minor issues in the constitutions once it's passed. As long as you have a board, you can have the special meetings and the annual general meetings to change the minor issues. Alfie?
I think the main issues, actually not the issues, but the mandate of the Normalization Committee was 1, the Constitution, and then 2, make way for elections. The only problem I have with the Normalization Committee is that there's nothing, absolutely nothing, that seems to come from them. They've met the empires, they met the clubs through the counties. They've met literally all the stakeholders. We've not, since our presentation, we've never had anything come from the Normalization Committee. In fact, as we speak, we don't even know at what stage the Normalization Committee is in. It was so simple. Even before the Normalization Committee came in, there was a draft constitution, and which literally everybody, probably apart from a county or two, that were in disagreement. And these are issues that I believe are not supposed to take 6 months to sort out. Normalization committee came in March. We in August now. Apart from the rumors that probably you get from an insider or probably somebody who's spoken to one of the members of the normalization committee, none of us in cricket know what is happening. And this is despite making calls, because I remember when we presented our views to the normalization committee at the Nyayo Stadium, we were made to believe, and this was from the floor, that that office was open. Now, it is so sad that when you call the numbers that were given then, the first time you call, you speak. Now, the second time to make a follow-up, since now, I believe because they recognize your number, nobody picks up. So we in cricket are really wondering, it is true, the normalization committee was of our own doing. It is because we as stakeholders failed cricket that the normalization committee had to come in. But 6 months down the line, we left wondering, are normalization committee actually doing what the CS in appointing them are getting down to work on the issues that they were meant to dissolve?
All right. They have a small leeway to run the national teams. That's why we saw the ladies team going to Kigali. That's why we are seeing the men's team now traveling to Uganda tomorrow. So who's the unseen face that's running things as far as the day-to-day cricket is concerned that we cannot reach out to? Is there a face? Wahome.
Well, I wouldn't say there's a face, but you'd have to look at what the mandate was. It is to oversee the Secretariat of Cricket Kenya. So which means that we know that the GM resigned. So who's the senior most officer at Cricket Kenya? That's the person that the normalization committee reviews. Because in essence, the normalization committee, in as much as recognized by the International Cricket Council, there are aspects of the sport that would have to be dealt with by the federation itself, by the Cricket Kenya. So in that case, there's somebody at Cricket Kenya whose mandate one would have to move as a person who understands, an insider in the sport, as would be, who's been involved, in the day-to-day running of it, would have to be involved with the national team. And this is a concept that has to be understood from the sports management perspective. Think of it, you would not go and pick, say, Nick Mwendwa to be the team manager of the Malkia Strikers or Pico Idaka Kioni to be the team manager of the Harambee Stars. It wouldn't work. Then you'd have to pick somebody from football to lead the delegation within the Harambee Stars delegation. If it's from volleyball, you pick somebody from the Harambee are supposed to play somewhere, they speak the football language. So in this case, when the cricket teams go to play, whether it was the Kwibuka tournament or if is this the series with Uganda, there is the language of cricket, which means that somebody from cricket has got to be there. And so that's the person who's involved, and this mandate sticks to the national teams specifically. Anything below that, we have got to acknowledge, we do not have a national league per se in the country. What we've had are leagues that are based on the regions. You've got Mombasa, they've had their tournaments, Nairobi have had their tournaments. But I hardly would do, for the last, 14, 15 years I've covered cricket, haven't had a case where we've come to have a proper, what would you call it, Nairobi versus Mombasa cricket, championship, where you have got clubs playing across, the way you have the Kenya Cup or in rugby, or even the national, or even the FKF Premier League. So, but at the national team level, that's where it stops. And that means that due to obligations that were there and the build up to some of these things, then then how the normalization committee when they announced the selection panel, I think that's the last public announcement, from the normalization committee, was the appointment of the selection panel. Then that would be the national team. It's part of their mandate, but how it's being handled at the moment, because ideally no cricket domestically would be played in Kenya if the normalization committee had its way, but that would be that would be a loss for the sport. This is sport, it's team sport. You do not stay sharp by permanently staying in the nets as a bowler, or as a or even as a batsman, or even as a fielder. You don't go diving. There's the game situation. Alfred is a coach, is a player, and is a coach. He will understand this. So they've allowed these leagues to happen, but it's just that point. At the secretariat, who are in charge? Those are the people who are speaking the cricket language. The normalization committee's mandate is purely administrative. They are a receiver manager for Cricket Kenya. That's how I'd put it.
Okay, Alfie, do you think they've met any expectations as per now? Because, well, teams are going on tour. The ladies went on tour. I'm assuming if they'd qualified to go and play the qualifiers in Botswana, the normalization committee will have organized for them to go. I'm not sure whether that will have succeeded or not. If we get to September 7th, November 7th, and we don't have a board yet, I also assume the normalization committee is going to organize for the men's team to go to Kigali for the T20 qualifiers. But don't you think they are overreaching? Because cricket for us is not the national team. We have development, we have age group cricket, we have cricket outside Nairobi. And I'm very sure the normalization committee will not be able to run that, even if they want to. Our money is being held up in Dubai. It's a lot of money, running to 20 million every quarter. I don't think even if the sports fund wants, they can give us that much money. Yeah, because that's running to 80 million in a year. They're not going to give you that. So is this normalization committee really helping us, even though we seem to be moving because the national team is going on tours? Do you think, have they met any of your expectations, Alfie?
I think the earlier the normalization committee handed over cricket to the cricket owners, the better. And as I might be repeating, but I don't think a constitution that had already been drafted for fine-tuning is supposed to take 6 months. We all know the national body is usually in charge, and in particular in cricket, the national body sole responsibility is the national team, and of course making sure that even the other counties run. I'll keep insisting. We hear nothing from the normalization committee. These fixtures are not a making of the normalization committee. ICC fixtures are not a making of the ICC. In fact, if anything, the normalization committee is only supposed to facilitate this time round in the absence of the national body. If only the normalization committee would be updating us about the progress. The last I heard from the CS was that the normalization committee was making progress that none of us as stakeholders know about. I've been in cricket for a very long time, and I know we used to have fixtures amongst counties, and then by then there were provinces. When Kenya played, when Nairobi had fixtures in Mombasa, where top clubs in Mombasa had fixtures against the top. This all has come to, or rather came to a stop because of the interests, personal interests in the board because of personal interests in the board. And it is because wrong selections were made for members to go to the national body. And this is why, as a stakeholder, I strongly feel we'll be given back our game. Because personally, I think the National Normalization Committee has overstayed. A constitution and an election, to me, is not supposed to have taken the time that it has taken.
Finally, as we wind up, Wahome, why the secrecy? Why are they not updating us? And do you think they could be stuck because there are so many cricket stakeholders who are ready to give them the necessary help that they require?
I think what needs to be made is clear. And number one, the cricket fraternity basically just needs to write an open letter, if I was suggested, to the State Department for Sport, because we know that the Cabinet Secretary, Ambassador Amina Mohammed, through her faith, she's in a mourning period, which means that her public engagements are very limited. That's why she's not seen everywhere after her husband passed away. So her public engagements are limited because of her faith and what it demands for somebody who's in mourning. But overall, a public letter needs to be done. Number two, something that people need to see and understand about how Kenyan legislation and sport-led legislation around sport and international federation work is that it's not in sync. A lot needs to be changed. I'll give an example. In 2016, when Kenya was about to be red listed because of not being code compliant with the World Anti-Doping Agency, the document that was passed was basically, there was nothing wrong with it. If you look at it from the sporting world, there was nothing wrong with it. But when it went to Parliament so that it could be an act that formed the Anti-Doping Agency of Kenya, the laws simply do not blend. The language used in the country at times does not make sense to somebody who's in Canada. In Canada, when you talk about Parliament, it's Parliament. In Kenya, when you say the National Assembly, they say, no, it should be Parliament, but you tell them Parliament includes the Senate. But in this case, because this is a bill that involves money, then it has to be the National Assembly. So that's when they agree. And also the regulations of the sports registrar. When Football Kenya Federation were having a problem with the elections last year, a decision was made. And the Sports Dispute Tribunal said that you cannot register counties individually as if they are federations independent of the national federation. But that's the way the regulations have been set, which means that if I am from Kirinyaga, I have to go to the Kutus, I have to go to the Kirinyaga County, I have to go and register Kirinyaga Cricket County Association as a federation, technically as a federation, with a board in itself and everything and structures in finances. And then at the same time, I need the mandate from Cricket Kenya, the national board. It's like telling a bank that because you're headquartered in Nairobi, but you want to open a branch in Machakos, then you go and register with the central bank again. The bank is already registered with the central bank. So that's a concept. It's in SD decision number 3 and 5, I think, of 2020, the one involving FKF. So that's a challenge when it comes to this, because you've got to understand the transition of cricket from provincial and also a lot of affiliation with private clubs to the county level. That's going to be a challenge from the culture of the sport in the past. That's going to take time, and there are people who are going to contest it. Number two is the rigidity of the rules that have been set out, the regulations of the sports registrar, not the Sports Act per se, the regulations of the sports registrar. They tend to see everything from a parastatal point of view. It's like a federation is supposed to be a parastatal. I work in a parastatal, so I understand how it's set up. So that needs to change. But for the normalization committee, they just need to come out clear. We know that the constitutional making process was supposed to start, I think, in June. By end of July, it was supposed to be specifically June and July, so that elections are done in August. So that, I mean, even if the extension was, it wasn't to be longer than 2 weeks. But right now, 3 months in, the constitution hasn't been resolved. That needs to be solved, like Alfie is talking about. Because until that constitution is resolved, accepted by the sports registrar and accepted by the International Cricket Council, you won't have an active board. And when you don't have an active board, development, zero. I think Kenya has lost what? Close to $500 million shillings in total, not just the 80 million you're mentioning. It's close to $500 million shillings for cricket. I mean, when the math was done, $500 million shillings has been lost.
Yeah, if you include the national fixtures, yes, could be.
Yes, yes, it's close to $500 million for the cricket ecosystem in Kenya. That has been lost because of these wrangles. And it's mainly about the constitution. But you've got to align with the Sports Act so that the Cricket Kenya now is eligible to get from the sports fund funding for all the national teams. Men, women, age grade doesn't matter. All the national teams will be funded that way. And also the ICC has got to be happy with the document with the constitution that is provided. Once those two are sorted, then you're okay. And I think that's the biggest challenge that's got to be done. And it is time that the normalization committee came out, Lady Justice and our team, let them come out and say, this is where we are. Because once the constitutional matter is sorted, I'll tell you, elections will just happen. The electoral board is not a big thing.
Yes.
The electoral board is not a big thing, but the constitution is the main thing. And it's because of those two things, the ICC requirements and the rigidity of the regulation set out by the Registrar of Sports.
But that's the thing, the ICC has a guiding document. They have their own constitution. We have the Sports Act. The Normalization Committee did not start from scratch. When we had the interim committee, they came up with a document. It wasn't perfect, but it was a start. And like I said, the only issues that were sticking out were concerning the electoral college and membership, like voter eligibility and the system on how to vote in the board members. Just that. I don't think with all those lawyers in that what is it called, that normalization committee, it's supposed to have taken 6 months, not showing us anything, and then asking for another 2-month extension. There are even rumors out there that they sent that document to ICC and the ICC sent it back.
Yes, Beryl, let me just quickly weigh in on that. What you've got to deal with is not what you see, but it is what is hidden. There is a culture of the sport. You're telling this sport to break away from the private members club structure and the provincial structure that is closed into one that makes it open to everyone. It's not easily acceptable. So what you're asking people to do is to break a culture. And that is where the big fight is. Until that cultural aspect is properly addressed in a constitution making process, then you are going to have this problem. And I think that's what needs to be addressed. And so long as we keep hiding away from that cultural aspect, I think you won't have a proper solution. You may have a constitution, but it will eat the sport from the inside.
All right.
See, Wahome, if I may
parting shot, Alfie. Yeah.
Just to kind of add on to what Wahome's contribution, as long as they don't tell us, what this the proposed constitution and what ICC demands of the constitution, for as long as they keep that to themselves, and remember, they'll not be there after the constitution.
Yes.
Only elected officials of the board.
Yes.
So in as far as they try and keep it away and not tell us what is happening, I think they're failing, not only the cricketers, but even their appointing officer. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for your time. We cannot exhaust this issue, but I think what we have come up with is, it doesn't need to be a secret. Yeah, it's a government appointed committee. They call stakeholders. I think it's only fair that they come back to the stakeholders and tell them that this is what you told us to do. This is where we are at. This is what is difficult to achieve. And this is what we are hoping to achieve in that specified amount of time. Because now we are in the dark, everyone is just speculating, rumors are flying in left, right, and center. Everyone thinks that the normalization committee now wants to be the Cricket Kenya board. So as Wahome has said, I think we should embark on that open letter to the State Department for Sports and find out what's actually happening. I don't think that should be an issue. It's the government, it's a public office. We should be able to know what they're doing. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you so much for your contributions, guys. I will pick this up after we get some feedback. Thank you so much for your time.